All right, everyone, we're back for another movie review on our as yet untitled review show.
I think that's what it should be called, the Untitled Review Show.
I like we're so ambitious we just start doing things without any sort of forethought or planning a title or anything. Let everyone know what we're reviewing this time.
Today we're reviewing Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. See,
Hellraiser
this is the
3.
confusing part because it's Hellraiser, then Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, and then it's Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth.
Yeah, they just kind of I think they just make it up as they go along.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, should we do another sequel? Yeah, we're going to do another sequel.
So what did you think of this one?
This is my favorite one of the whole series. This is the one where like they I think they deviate from the John Carpenter lore as much as they possibly can,
Clive
but
Barker.
also sorry,
Clive Barker, not John
Clive
Carpenter.
Barker, not John Carpenter. I was listening to a podcast about The Thing, so now I have
Uh,
John Carpenter running through my head. But Clive Barker, I think this is the one where they deviate from the Clive Barker like mythos the most, but it's also like the most fun, the most over the top. Some of the acting is kind of like a little wonky at places. I kind of love how like
that's putting it nicely.
I really like imagining Bradley in like the gray face stone paint makeup and standing in that giant's pillar and just like, all right, Doug, you ready? Action. Ah!
Yeah, yeah, this one is. There's a lot of people, especially like Hellraiser purists. I guess they would say they don't like it just because it does. This is kind of like the Metallica Black album, where it's the most like
Commercial.
mainstream kind of one.
Yep.
But there's something a bit cheaper about it too. But I would have to say it might be my favorite too. Although I like the first two as like a lot, but
But
this
the
one
first two
is
were
it's just
very
fun.
esoteric and very like how do you put it? Like they were influenced by like different scenes and like he was trying to tell you like something about what Clive Barker was about in those movies. Whereas I think with Hellraiser 3, they're not trying to tell you anything. They're trying to like make sure you have a good time.
Yeah, it's just a funner movie to watch. And the first two was like the Pinhead and the Cenobites were they weren't the main focus. Like there was a story without them, and it kind of revolves around them. Whereas this one, it's about Pinhead, the JP Monroe but also they turned Pinhead into kind of more of like a slasher. Before he was never like full on killing people. Whereas in this one, he's like slaughters an entire bar full of people. Um, and honestly, that scene is like probably one of the coolest scenes in horror. That's the one like when I saw it as a teenager where I was like, freaking Hellraiser's awesome.
Did you see he shoved like I guess at one point he must have shoved like billiard balls into some guy's mouth
Yeah,
because like it was just stuff. I was watching that being like, I wonder if that's like a prosthetic they put on his face or like it was
yeah,
probably
it's
a
gotta be.
prosthetic, you know?
But I wondered, like, did he have a jaw big enough that he could fit one ball in his mouth, and they put prosthetics for two, or is
On the other side.
yeah, it's but yeah, the biggest drawbacks for it were the really shitty acting at parts, and the main girl in it, like, she was pretty good, but she was just kind of like flat.
Not
Um,
Joey, but like the street brat that she
No,
picks.
I found Joey. Well, I guess both of them kind of were, but like Joey, I guess, is the main character. Like the JP Monroe guy, he was a pretty big role. At least he was like, he's kind of a dirtbag, but at least he was like interesting to watch.
Do you know
Uh,
he before that he had like a steady spint on General Hospital. He was like a
oh,
soap
really?
actor. Yeah, he had like a steady sprint on General Hospital, and then he got
I could
cast to
see it.
JP Monroe on Hellraiser 3. Yeah, you can see him as a soap star, right?
Yeah, he just has that kind of look. Yeah, and some of like the I can overlook it just for how entertaining the movie is, but some of the dialogue is so bad. Probably the prime example is when Joey, the reporter, she's trying to find the street girl that she met at the hospital the night before, where some guy was like horribly murdered by the Hellraiser chains. So she goes to this bar looking for her. She goes up to the bartender and she's like, "Hi, I'm here looking for a really pretty girl." And the bartender's like, "Yeah, over there in the back room." It's like there's one pretty girl in the
Yeah,
whole
there's
bar,
just
like
one pretty girl hanging
just
around.
like instantly knows who she
Oh,
means.
you mean
Like
the girl that JP Moore Monroe murdered? She's right there.
yeah, so there were
Did you
parts
look?
like that that were just cringe-worthy, horrible dialogue. But honestly, it kind of adds to the enjoyment of the film. Like, so I like a lot of them. It's like I don't really want it to be super good and polished. You kind of, especially the these 80s, early 90s movies, that charm is like the somewhat kind of bad acting.
The charm is some of the bad acting. The girl who, like, the first kill, I think we're talking about the same person. The blonde girl who was first killed by the pillar. Her name, the actress's name is Amy. She's a Canadian actress. I heard her name written down here. Amy Lee. Yeah, she's like, I don't know what she was doing in this movie. I
Yeah,
hate to talk shit about someone else's acting because, like, I mean, whatever. But like, yeah, I don't know what she was doing in this movie.
it was yeah, it was pretty pitiful. However, like her death scene, that was a pretty memorable death scene, getting gets lifted off the ground by the chains and gets her like
and
skin
just
ripped
like
off.
and just like fed into the pillar.
Yeah.
That was pretty slick. Did you look into the director's other film? So I guess before this, they cast him on the strength of he had done Waxworks 2
Oh, okay.
before this. Yeah, have you ever seen Waxworks?
I think I have at some point when I was younger. I just don't really remember it.
Yeah, it's one of those like late 80s horror movies, but he'd done like Waxwork 1 and then like he'd done a vampire movie and then Waxwork 2, and these were all comedies that he'd done. So then like they were going to get the guy who originally directed Hellraiser 2, they were going to get him to direct it again, but he was like, "Nah, I got other things going on." And he recommended Anthony Hickox, who is the director of Hellraiser 3. But they were like, "Listen, you're a funny guy. We don't want any funny stuff on this movie. It's a serious movie, no comedy." But you can still kind of see his comedy roots come through in the
Yeah, I
film.
think some of it may not have been intentional, but it definitely has like for how violent it is, like there is like it's not
Cartoony.
quite as serious as the other two. There were so many parts in it, like I mean I've seen it like, probably 15 times before, but for this review, I was watching it and I'm like, I'm really gonna pay attention to detail. And there's so many things that just don't make sense. Like, okay, there's this bar where like 100 people were just murdered. They have a scene on the news with the police and like ambulance are at this place. They obviously know about it. And the next scene is like the reporter going there, and there's no one there. Like all the bodies are there, but there's no police. They don't have it cordoned off. Like the
They're
police
just
just went
like,
home
"Yep,
for the
we're
day and
done
left
here now."
just left bodies laying. It just doesn't
Nope.
make sense. I know obviously
We
they did it for budget reasons, but
No, they're just no. The cops, don't you know? Whenever they investigate a murder scene, they're like, "Well, we've done all the evidence collecting we need to do now.
yeah,
Clean up is somebody else's job."
these coroners don't work past 5 p.m., so they're gonna have to wait till morning before they come to take the bodies away, and they're just gonna let people from the street wander around the crime scene. Yeah, there is a whole lot of things like that that were kind of nonsensical, but
Yeah.
um, I did like the new cenobites. I know I've heard people complain about that it doesn't make because in the old ones it was like you had to be kind of like evil, you had to invite it in to become a cenobite.
These
Whereas
ones are
now
just
it's
kind of
like
captured.
yeah, it's like oh, Pinhead chooses you. You're the DJ at the bar, so now you're a Cenobite with CDs on his head and that shoots CDs. Which I don't know. I think is super cool. I think that the story changes because now that Pinhead has been like separated from his human self, he's basically like making his own rules. He's like even more evil than before, and he can create his own Cenobites without needing Leviathan's like help. That's kind of how I see it.
What do you think JP Monroe's Cenobite trait was? Because I was trying to figure it out. He's got like the engine in his head that's like
Yeah,
back and forth, back and
I don't
forth.
quite get that one. Like the others, like the camera guy now has a camera
Yeah, it
thing in
has a
his
camera
head.
for the eye. And then he
Um,
was like a good guy that they turned evil because then Joey was like, Terry. Or not
yeah,
Terry,
it's
but like whatever the guy's name was.
Doc. Yeah,
Doc, no, Doc.
yeah. So I don't get why he turned evil, but yeah, they all have a trait that fits their personality. But yeah, Jeep. I don't know. Maybe it was just like because it looked cool. Like
Yeah,
maybe they didn't put any
it's
thought
just
into
whatever
it.
was
But
around.
and I think Terry's too. Like since she was like the street girl, like she was like a main character in the movie. I just wish she like her Cenobite was a bit cooler. It just
She
looked
had
like
like the everything was cool except for the cigarettes sticking out of her throat. I don't know why. For me, I was just like, come on.
Yeah,
Like
it was.
you looked at
I
this
just
and you're
wish they
like,
did something
let's
a bit more. I don't know. I just wish it had been more creative or something. But um, yeah, they got a bit more into. You got to see a bit more of Doug Bradley in his like human form, and they had the whole. It was kind of cheesy, but it was they did have some like Vietnam kind of war scenes. They had World War I war scenes because the main
I like
character's
that
dad
stuff.
was in Vietnam.
I think this is the first movie I ever watched that involved Vietnam, if I'm thinking back. Like it's the first, because there have been so many movies on Vietnam and so many like things referencing that period of time. But like I think Hellraiser 3 is the first time I was aware. I mean, I watched MASH before, but like, I was a
That was
kid. I don't know
Korea.
what the hell was going on. That was Korea, but the TV show was in Vietnam, was it not?
Think so. I'm pretty sure it was Korea. I could be wrong, but
Maybe I'm wrong. I know the movie was in Korea.
yeah.
But yeah, either way, like this is the first time I was like, wow, war is hell.
I'm not sure if Hellraiser 3 is the most accurate portrayal of Vietnam War, but
No, probably not.
that's what they show in school to teach everyone. Watch a scene from
Yeah, they're
Hellraiser
like, this
3.
is what Vietnam was like. Cenobites. That's what we were fighting in Vietnam. Little people know this. It was the communist forces and the Cenobites. Communist Cenobites.
But yeah, Hellraiser 3 had some really just the parts where the Cenobites were walking down the streets and they're blowing shit up and fighting police officers. Like that was pretty cool. Like the limited budget they had and the kind of cheesy effects, but it did look cool. Even Pinhead in the church when he's pulling the pins out of his head. Like
Oh, it
there's
looks.
so many parts that were like that's pretty cool. He doesn't may not make sense with the lore, but it's pretty awesome.
And I think that's probably what they prioritized to a certain degree was like, we're gonna like pick the scenes, we're gonna write scenes that we think look cool as hell, and we're gonna like just don't worry about the plot really.
Yeah,
The budget was an estimated $5 million American, I think. In well, when did this come out? This was 89.
actually it was like 92 or what. I think it was like early 90s, I'm pretty sure. Could be wrong.
Yeah, you're right, 92.
Okay.
92. So $5 million in 92. That's pretty high budget for if you think about it now.
But also like things are just more expensive back then to do those effects. Might effects might be cheaper now, but maybe like the crew and cast and crew pay would be more. So it's hard to know like what you
Yeah, because
get for
that was all
your.
union then. There was like, yeah,
So it's just like yeah, I don't know how far that money went.
calculate. $11 million in 1992. $5 million for 2024 would be $11 million, which is kind of like a mid-budget movie now, I
It
guess.
seems like it because I remember watching the commentary on one of the Friday the 13th movies, and one of the actors said they're like the budget was like 12 million or whatever it was, and they're like that sound like these days that sounds like quite a bit, but like back then like that didn't go very far.
Well, I mean,
However, the
film,
money
how
was
much did
worth more.
film cost? This is
Yeah,
before
yeah,
digital storage or anything.
yeah. So there was yeah, so it's really hard to judge, but they had some money. I think the first two were quite successful, so they really put some serious money behind it. And some of it you could tell, like it looks like there's just you know explosions and fires, like you could tell, especially that last kind of 15 minutes of the movie. They really put a lot of money into that. It is held back by like yeah the wooden acting, which I can't. Sometimes it works, like it's kind of like the Toxic Avenger movie. The crappy acting
Yeah,
is like what makes it.
it goes
Um,
from movie to movie. It depends on like how the rest of the movie fares up against the wooden acting.
But there are times like there's some scenes where just like Joey's talking to Doc, and it's like, holy crap, is this ever just the most boring, crappy dialogue and acting ever? If people watch it, they'll know what we mean.
Oh,
The,
they'll know what we're talking about. You
yeah.
you you watch it and you tell me if you believe that their character believes where they're at. But overall,
But
what would you rate this though? Like bad wooden acting aside, questionable
I would
effects aside.
I think I'd give it probably like the first two a 7.5, but a different 7.5. Some things are better, some things are worse, but even though it's my favorite, I would rate it. It's kind of one of those things where it's like there's a movie that you think is a better movie, but it's not your favorite to watch. Whereas some movie that's fun to watch, it's kind of like comparing Billy Madison to Schindler's List. Like
Yes,
Schindler's
yeah,
List is a better
absolutely.
movie, but I kind of Billy Madison's still awesome, but in a very, very different way.
The barrier to entry for Billy Madison and for our case, Hellraiser 3, the barrier to entry is much lower. You don't have to like it's more fun, it's more geared towards entertainment, whereas one and two are more like trying to establish an atmosphere and trying to be dirty and trying to be like contemporary, like you have to invest a certain amount into the world. Whereas with Hellraiser 3, you don't really need to invest a lot into the world. All you need to know is he's a Cenobite, he kills things.
Yeah, like I think
Cenobite thing.
if you watched part two as your very first one, you would be so lost and wouldn't know what the hell's going on. But you could watch Hellraiser 3 as your first Hellraiser movie
You'd be
and figure
fine.
out what's going on. I do like how they bring Kirsty back for like a little cameo. They reference the Chenard Institute, so they're not like starting fresh. They are kind of carrying it over. Plus, obviously, like the pillar from the last one, although the pillar has like different faces on it and stuff, but whatever. It could have changed between movies or something.
I always
Um,
remember that being like weird for me because I'd be like, yeah, wait a minute. Wasn't the pillar before? It was just this smooth thing, and now it's got all these faces. But I guess like as he traps more souls.
yeah, I mean, once you get into that metaphysical world, you can't make up any excuse for that. But one thing I did like about the movie is in the boiler room, they had the heavy metal band Armored Saint playing,
Armor
and
Saints.
people might know that John Bush, the singer, went on to become the new singer for Anthrax during the 90s. So heavy metal fans might get a kick out of that.
Well, this is also where like the title track, Motorhead's Hellraiser. That was
Yes,
an Ozzy Osbourne cover.
I didn't even know which is weird because I saw this movie when I was really young before I ever heard the Ozzy song, but I didn't know that Ozzy Osbourne and Motorhead both had a version of the same song. I thought it was just an Ozzy song until I rewatched this movie and oh, it's a Motorhead
Well,
song.
there's a third version I think that came out recently that has both of their voices in it. They like
Oh,
did like a mashup kind of situation.
oh damn, I'll have to look that up. Like I think if you're gonna recommend one of these to people, like this is the most like accessible one
Yes.
where it's like the one that say like newer fans of like newer horror movies that may not like the old stuff more, they would probably find this one far more entertaining.
You'll have a good time at this one.
Yeah, like yeah, there's so many cool things in it. Like I like the fresh cenobites because yeah, we saw like the chatter and the butterball and the female one. They were in the first two movies and then they all got killed. So just Pinhead came back. But then we got
Yep.
a bunch of fresh ones. I guess the only drawback in this is that the new cenobites are in it very briefly. They come about and then they're killed within
And
a
then
few
they're
minutes.
gone pretty quick. Yeah.
But they do get to do some cool stuff, and it's so cheesy how those like cops show up when the Cenobites are like blowing shit up. So the Joey runs up to the one cop and she's like, "Oh my God, they're coming! Help me!" And the cop is like, "Okay, calm down, ma'am. You're gonna be okay." Meanwhile, there's these like three people blowing shit up that are like 30 feet away from them, walking towards them.
And the cops are
Uh,
just like, stay calm, stay calm.
but yeah, those were like some of the funnest parts. And yeah, like that scene in the bar where Pinhead appears and everyone just kind of stops and stares at him in the bar, and then he's like,
And he's
"Shall
just
we
like
begin?"
the doors blow out.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it's just everyone starts dying in the most like ridiculous effects way. But then even the part where like they run for the door and the door slams and then the chains come in and like tie the door closed. You see like blood pooling underneath the door, and you just hear the sound of like chains whipping people. And yeah, that was like one of the best moments in horror movies, I would say.
That must have been so fun to shoot. Like as the crew, it must have been so fun to shoot, but it probably was the longest days on set. It was probably like a couple of days thing where they
I
had
bet you
to.
more. I bet you it was probably like half the movie was spent doing those scenes because a lot of the
Yeah,
other
I can
scenes
only
were just
imagine.
two people together. They were kind of easier to do. Um, and there was this things too. They kind of changed. Like before, it seemed like you go to the hell world, and then Leviathan or whoever would turn you into a Cenobite, like they did with Doctor Chenard in that world. Whereas now it seems like Pinhead can just turn him into a Cenobite on Earth, and he even tries turning Joey into a Cenobite, where she gets lifted off the ground, and then that metal thing goes on her head, and then that
Yep, and like the
big thing comes out
BDSM
of the ground.
costume, and like it starts all like.
Yeah, so I think they kind of just make it up as they go along, or it's like each new director kind of like changes the lore. I don't know how much influence Clive Barker, if any, he had on this movie. I'm guessing not a lot. He probably just had some sort of like royalty check, and then he's
Yeah,
just
he's just
like,
like,
yeah,
all
do
right, I'll
whatever.
check this, I'll cash this check, and I'm good.
Because I know he came back as executive producer for part four, the next one.
Oh my God, he
Um,
was the executive producer for that one.
yeah, I think he had. I was reading about it last night after I watched it, and yeah, like I guess he had some more influence on it, but it still ended up getting all fucked
Yeah,
up.
that was pure. He was just cashing a check there.
Yeah, we'll discuss that one later. What would you give Hellraiser 3 on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd agree with you, 7.5, but like a different 7.5 because like some
Yeah,
things are good, some things are bad. It's an enjoyable film overall, so it's not a bad film. You're not gonna have a bad time watching it, but like there's things that could be better. There's things that like definitely have been I've seen done worse.
like usually when I watch part 1 and 2, when I watch them, I'll be like, yeah, these are better. But then I'll watch part 3 again. I'll be like, nah, this is better. Like
This is the fun one. Like you
yeah,
watch
they're
part
all
one and part
different.
two to prime yourself.
Yeah, they're all like good in different ways. But like, say like you were on like a desert island and you had to pick one, and that was the only movie you could watch over and over again the rest of your life. I would probably pick part 3 just because it's
Yep,
just funner to watch.
I would agree.
Cool. All right. So
All right.
next time we will be reviewing Hellraiser Bloodline, which
Part
was the.
four.
So I think that's it's going to be an interesting one. So I guess we'll end it there, and we'll see everyone next time.
Awesome. All right, well, take it easy, guys, and we'll see you for Hellraiser 4 Bloodline.